seems to me that focusing too much on its potential side effects is distracting. Much like with the exponential curve exercise, people are given a red herring to argue over by diverting energy away from discussing the real problem, transformation. For example, it's too easy to ridicule Kurzweil's belief that he'll be able to bring back his father from the dead. Interestingly, there was an article in Wire magazine about a year ago that talked about a technique called compressive sensing, a clever way to reconstruct high-resolution images from random samples. It seems conceivable, given enough computing power, a similar approach could be used to reconstruct the causal system that produced the artifacts that Kurzweil collects in this special room, that is, his father. Or then again, perhaps not. My point is that it's kind of moot to discuss things we'd be able to do after Singularity while having a scant idea about how to survive it in the first place. You see, if we're dead, the only thing we're going to do is to lay still and decompose. Now, after the profound transformation, this is how I sometimes illustrate the magnitude of it. If you think about it, there have been two major transformations on our planet that do set it apart from the countless others in the visible universe. First, if you take a lifeless planet, introduce self-replicators, and let evolution run for a few billion years, you get this. If you look around in a forest, most of the objects you see are the products of evolution. Now that was the first transformation. The second one happened in the last 200,000 years after evolution managed to cough up species that are capable of deliberate design. So now our planet can produce cities. The creation of superintelligence will likely be a third such event, and possibly have even greater magnitude, since it has the potential to affect the whole visible universe, not just our planet. Or as Kurzweil put it in the movie, regardless of what you call it, it will be the universe waking up. Myself, I would agree with that statement if it would also acknowledge the possibility of a dystopian scenario of the universe dying. Because a dead universe is a stable attractor. That is, it is much more likely for a living universe to die as a result of a catastrophic event than for a dead universe to wake up. That's just basic thermodynamics. Not to mention that the fact that we don't see anyone else in the universe having successfully navigated the periods of singularity. And that should give the optimists pause. So what to do in order to avoid falling into the black hole of singularity? This is what Nick Bostrom has noted about AIs. When dumb, smarter is safer. When smart, smarter is more dangerous. What it means is that we need to, A, get all the AI developers to recognize that the work is getting more dangerous over time. And B, devise an array of safety measures that the developers must adhere to. So what kind of safety measures are we talking about? Well, we can already tell that the safety measures should not assume a ghost in the machine we can negotiate with, i.e. the program itself has to be safe when run first time. So we need to use things like algorithm correctness, proving, and recursive decision theory in order to predict what the program is about to do and run. Also, given the potential speed of the transformation, we probably won't have time to have an interactive dialogue with AI. So all sorts of monitor and then shutdown measures are unlikely to work. Instead, we need things like tripwires, systems that probably stay under the radar of the AI and shut it down should it deviate from the expected behavior. But the overall answer is that we seem to be completely unprepared for singularity now, as there are so many important questions that must be answered before it happens. In addition to predicting and constraining the AI behavior, we need to understand ourselves better. That is, we need to find out what it is that we consider a good future, and what are the values that we want the AI to preserve and promote in our universe. I would say that after thousands of years of pondering about interesting paradoxes and whatnot, the philosophers today are are in an unenviable position where they finally need to start producing answers, and those answers be correct, and in the form of computer cookies, so they could be embedded in the AI. So as a conclusion, I think the movie is valuable because the topic is incredibly important. But I think the religious undertone is just bad PR. And too much talk about exponentials merging immortality, bringing back the dead, is just distracting. And I think we need more movies like that, but with a focus on the transformation and safety. Thank you.
Well, that was a lot to think about there too. I want to now move from the philosopher past the physicist and engineer to a partner at a VC fund who is making bets all the time about which technologies will be important in the short term and long term. This is Nick Brisbane, VC and blogger on technology, and he's going to give us some of his thoughts. Over to you, Nick.
Afternoon, everyone. So as a VC, I've been a student of change in technology for 11 years now, and I was first introduced to the ideas of Ray Kurzweil via the blog of another VC at the beginning of last year, beginning of 2010. So I thought it was kind of interesting, a radical take on how things are changing, why, how fast. I thought I need to understand more about that. So I went to Amazon, bought myself a book, bought the wrong book actually. I got Transcendent to start with it. How many guys? So most of you have read the Singularity, I guess. So why don't we have a little show of hands here? Who's read the Singularity? Okay. Maybe half. And who's read Transcend? Yeah, a few less. So, for those of you who have, that's his, I think, Ray came to write Transcend after conceiving his singularity theory because, he wanted to know what he needed to do to keep himself in good shape until the singularity arrived, as he's talked about in his movie. Anyway, so I found myself in that book first, read Singularity second, and that's when it really kind of clicked for me. So we've reached the middle of last year now, and following reading the Singularity, I embarked on writing a series of blog posts to try and capture my thoughts and kind of distill it down into a kind of set of notes brief enough that I could go back to it as I did this morning to kind of remind myself what it was all about. And so the very first of those posts I wrote the following. Over the last 6 to 9 months, American inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil has had a profound influence on how I see the future and how I run my life today. His theories on the evolution of technology and its impact on society and the impact technology can have on our health and longevity today have been around for a while, but it's only in the last year that I've become familiar with them, largely through reading two of his books, Transcend and Singularity, and taking his weekly newsletter that I guess many of you get as well from his website. I've only just finished reading The Singularity, which I found to be sufficiently profound and thought-provoking that I'm going to summarise it over a series of blog posts, of which this is the first. So it's big thinking for me straight away, and I wrote these blog posts and then started thinking, well, where can I take this in my life? Where can I, as an individual, as a person, and as a professional investor, if you like, as a venture capitalist. So firstly, I think the conclusions are important, on my take on his conclusions. The data, I think, speaks for itself. And, interesting to hear some slight counter opinions today, but it seems pretty conclusive to me that, the rate of change is increasing, and, we are on an exponential curve. That was an idea I was actually first introduced to by Anthony Giddens, who's a sociologist. I did my undergrad degree at Cambridge in sociology and political science, and the very first lecture, we had a great long blackboard on the back, and Anthony Giddens did a pace of change over time, over 10,000 years that humans have been in existence, and it was a flat, you walk across the stage like this, and then hit the Industrial Revolution about here, and then things shot up in an exponential curve, and so that's, how sociologists have been thinking about the pace of change in society for 200 years now, and Ray's saying the same things in terms of technology. That I think is hard to argue with, and particularly when he goes into the detail that he does about the physics and so on by which the all the science which is going to underpin the continued development. You know, then I've been trying to soak up some of the counter arguments, and that to me, there's a lot of people who just don't want to believe for one reason or another, maybe religious reasons for that a lot of the time. But you know, the counter arguments which have the most substance, it seems to me, are the ones which talk about timing. And you know, and I think they're in nice and rough. You know, maybe he's right with his 2045, or maybe it's kind of 2065. But you know, I'm a very practical sort of guy. You know, I need to be that as a venture capitalist. I need to be investing in things that are going to make a practical difference in the next 3 to 5 years, and that's kind of the way I am anyway. And so, 2045, 2065. You know, it doesn't make a huge deal of difference to me. It's, you know, it's the direction that's important, and that much I'm clear on. So I think, okay, well, where do I go with this? So as an individual, I kind of I dove into Transcend, picked up as much of that stuff as I could. And you know, I'm conscious here my talk about to get very different from the previous two guys who are lucky enough to be able to devote a large portion of their lives to thinking and working in this area. You know, I'm kind of 60 hours a week a venture capitalist, probably 30 hours a week a father and husband and all the rest of it, and then this I get to do in my spare time. But you know, what I have done is kind of stepped up my efforts to really take care of myself. You know, if you believe that there's a chance for radical increase in our longevity over, you know, at some point in the next century, but you're not quite sure where it's going to be, then you want to make sure you're doing everything yourself you can to keep yourself in shape. And you know, so I was always reasonably fit for, you know, exercising maybe an average of 3 times a week. But I kind of stepped that up, so I'm now pretty much every working day. Weekends are for my wife and kids, but you know, every working day, you know, and I mix up cardiovascular exercise with strength exercise. I diet, you know, I count my calories obsessively. Many people would say, my wife likens this to a midlife crisis, and I say, you know, this is my midlife crisis, you've done really well. But you know, I keep myself to around 2,000 calories a day, and the big driver for me, you know, prior to that I was eating 3,000, 3,500, and you know, it's made a massive difference. I work hard to get 7.5 hours sleep a night when I can. You know, don't always get there, and that's gross of interruptions from the kids, which unfortunately are getting a little bit less now. They're 4 and 6, so it's getting easier. And I supplement, you know, not to the degree that Ray Kurzweil does. You know, in the movie, watching him, you know, eating his pills, and I did some sums in my head. You know, 200 pills. You know, if he's taking those pills for maybe 10 hours a day, you know, that's 20 an hour. That's a lot, and I didn't think of this question until afterwards, but you know, I was wishing I'd stepped behind and said, Ray, you know, I'm a big believer, you've had a big influence on my life and everything, but those pills, man, wow, you know, you're a clever guy, surely you could invent a drink or something. You know? There's got to be a better way to do that. You know, I work hard to keep my stress down, and you know, I've always kind of been mentally active and so on. You know, so since then, you know, and this is over the last 15 months, I've lost 20 pounds, I'm much fitter, no back pain, more energy, and you know, I think I look a little younger, and you know, so that's all good short-term stuff, and you know, hopefully this keeps me active in a way not too different to I am, you know, through to my 70s and 80s, even without any kind of radical advancements of the like that Aubrey Gray and Kurzweil talked about. So you know, so all that is well worth doing on a practical basis, even if you don't believe too much, and even if you do believe, then it, you know, the case becomes overwhelming. From a professional perspective, it's been more difficult. You know, one of the challenges, I think, in assessing Ray's work, you know, his best tool is the exponential, or how Metcalfe put it. You know, but not much happens at the beginning of an exponential. You know, in the short term, it's a little bit kind of hard to act on. You know, when I look at well, where are people going to make money based on this stuff in the next little while, you know, unless you dive really deep into the technology, looking at AI and so on, which are, you know, I'm more of a consumer-focused sort of guy, then I think the only area that you end up left with is in consumer health, or health more generally, and there I think, you know, we're maybe at the very beginnings of a wave of consumer health opportunities, consumer health devices, consumer health-oriented businesses that can really help all of us to live longer and happier and ultimately happier lives. And so, these are tools which, enable you to count your calories more easily. We've seen the first few crude ones of those around, sensors that connect up to your smartphones, which help you monitor your stress and how many calories you're burning, that sort of stuff. That's kind of the areas that I'm looking around for in the short term. But when I look at the companies in those spaces today, they're all kind of, just a little bit so-so. There's some tools there, but, they're kind of expensive, they're a bit clunky and not, I think, some ways off the mass market, but hopefully we're only a couple of years away from that changing. That's about it. Just briefly on the film, that's the last thing I wanted to say. So I enjoyed the film a lot, took a couple of my friends along, and it was a good reminder of Kurzweil's theses, and it was a beautifully shot film, and also some of the biographical stuff was interesting. But the one area which did disappoint me was the way in which the critiques of the movie were presented. And so, picking up from one thing Anders said, Jan said to me earlier, the criticism that he's overly optimistic, I think, actually did come out through the film. I've forgotten that. I'm kind of an optimistic guy by nature. You don't get very far as a venture capitalist unless you're a glass half full type of guy. There's too much chaos always in the companies in which we invest. So if you're not optimistic by nature, you kind of want to stick around these businesses long enough to make them work. So I'm an optimist, and I probably share that fault with many, but Kurzweil in this context. But beyond that, the criticisms were largely, and Anders put up the one from Kevin Kelly from Mike. Kevin Kelly, is a man who he's a great thinker. I respect a lot of what he's written, but his criticism of Kurzweil seemed to be an ask of faith for him, really, more than, he didn't go into any of the reasons why he thought that Kurzweil was wrong. He was just saying the guy's too short, he acts like a prophet, and he's wrong. And he was on the movie, maybe 3 times, I think, essentially saying the same point. And I don't know if there are not kind of better, deeper criticisms out there that are kind of easily accessible in soundbite form. Maybe that was the reason, but I don't know. If that's the only criticisms there are, then then you kind of left with little alternative but to kind of buy into the theory of cocktail, I guess. Anyway, so that was it. Take some questions in a minute, I guess. Thank you.
So we're going to move now to another type of life. This is a writer, literary critic, bootstrap big picture futurist, Paul Graham Raven, who amongst other things is editor-in-chief and publisher of the Dreaded Press, a rock music reviews web scene, and he's also published as a PR officer for publishing house, perhaps the UK's foremost boutique genre publisher, PS Publishing. So, Paul, what was your take on the film and the ideas involved? I'll try and switch this screen off because I think we're done with that now.
Well, the blue screen of death is kind of the story of everyone's life.
Do you want the blue screen of death left there?
It's quite fitting.
Okay, against the blue screen of death.
The sky was the colour of a television tuned to a black and red channel. Unlike most of our other panellists today, I have virtually no qualifications whatsoever. So take that however you'd like to. Just before we start, can I get a show of hands for, can everyone who identifies as a transhumanist or singularitarian, could you please put your hands up? Okay, I know like many people are going to need to run from afterwards. To get the basic philosophical positions out of the way, I suppose I'm a singularity skeptic, in that I'm pretty uncertain about where the timescales that get thrown around. I don't identify as a transhumanist, but I identify as a fellow traveller with transhumanism, in that I think that most of the technologies and changes that are talked about in transhumanist terms are pretty inevitable. However, I'm not entirely certain that, well, identifying with it as a movement is something that I'm pretty much kind of what I'm going to discuss here as we go along. But as far as talking about